Welcome to The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Profitable Cleaner podcast. We are following up on our Q2 check-in series where we're dropping masterclasses. Last week, or our last episode, we went ahead and we dropped our sales masterclass on how to get more leads, how to identify new prospects, all the tools you need, and all of that to help you grow your business as we are well on our way into Q2 here. That link is in the comments section below. If you guys have missed that, for our second part of the series of our three-part series on how to make your business run better and start implementing these systems and strategies, we told you we were going to bring the heat when it comes to scaling an excellent operation and learning how to recruit better for your company and how you can find more sub recruiters, which is a huge question that we get asked from you guys on almost a monthly basis. Is should I do the subcontractor model? If I do the subcontractor model, how do I keep quality control? And then if I decide to go that route, how do I find good people to work with? And then more so, what does the operation and the in-between look like when you are actually running a subcontractor or a hybrid model? Once you go out and get these new deals from the strategies we talked about in our last masterclass. So today, we are going to do something exclusively special that we've never done before. We have the Profit Advisory Board, which is a closed mastermind of 15 janitorial CEOs running multi-million-dollar companies where we meet every single month and we feature an expert to talk about a topic that's going to move your business forward. These are very real, unscripted, and uncandid conversations, and it's a very intimate, winning group of individuals. We have never in the history of this group released any of this content to the public except for today. If you are listening to this, if you are watching this, this is the first time ever that any Profit Advisory Board content has ever been released publicly to the public. And with that being said, this is the only piece of Profit Advisory Board content that will ever be released for the general public, mainly because we want to keep this group exclusive and special, but we wanted to bring you guys something very exciting at an expert level here today. And it just so happens, as timing would have it, that our good friend and leader, Dan Schindler, just did a masterclass on scaling your operations, sub-recruiting, and how to recruit better talent within your company for our Profit Advisory Group a few weeks back. And after watching this and going into the presentation that he delivers, it was so in-depth and so good, talking about how to manage the in-between and the chaos within your business and bring in the right people and find the right contractors to service the deals that you want to service, that we literally could not come up with anything better to bring you guys for this second masterclass part of our three-part series. So if you are listening to this, you're going to get some good stuff and some good juice from the audio. But what I recommend is head over to YouTube, like and subscribe, and watch the presentation, because Dan Schindler, the president of Integrity Facility Solutions, IFS as you will hear it referred to, did a full-on presentation to show you the behind the scenes of what it's like to run the operations, recruit, and work with contractors within his business of a $30 million plus a year cleaning company. He also brought on one of his key account managers. He had a recruiter on the call. It was a really in-depth call, and the presentation that he put together will absolutely change how you view your business and then ultimately operate within your business. Even if you run a W-2 model and you have employees, this is still going to benefit how you work, mainly because you get to see how a $30 million cleaning company runs their operation, and also will allow you a good way to see how they view recruiting. And whether you're recruiting for subs or you're recruiting for top tier employees, recruiting's recruiting and the principles apply across the board. So we could not be more thrilled to give you this exclusive Profit Advisory Board content, the first and the last public content that this group will ever put out. If you want to be part of this group, it's not too late. Click the link below. We'll get you part of this group. It's definitely an investment well worth it. But besides the point, you're going to see what goes on in these virtual rooms here, and just the level of knowledge and expertise and action that goes on. So when we were talking about, hey, we know we did our sales masterclass for the first of 3-part masterclass series that we're doing here for the Q2 check-in. When we were talking about recruiting and operations, and then we did this class with Dan Schindler, we just figured, man, we couldn't create anything better for you guys. So we are actually going to make this public. I hope you guys enjoy this as well as, or as much as I did. And I know our group at the Profit Advisory Board did. If you guys are interested in the Profit Advisory Board, drop a comment below. PAB, the PAB group is what we call it. It's a fun group to be a part of. If you guys have questions, drop a comment below and let us serve you. Let's see how we can answer your questions, give you some access to new information that is really not accessible out there, and hopefully with the intention and the goal to change your business. So welcome to the very first ever and the last ever Profit Advisory Board content that we are releasing publicly, and our second part to our Q2 check-in series, our Q2 check-in on how to scale your operations, recruit better talent, and it's a sub-recruiting masterclass. Enjoy.
What's up, Profitable Cleaner listeners? Quick question for you. Are you using 5 to 7 different platforms just to manage the everyday operations of your commercial cleaning company? If so, let us help you consolidate that into one platform. Introducing you uSource. Go to usource.com, book your free demo today, and actually get started on your trial for 60 days. No charge for 60 days, all from time and attendance to reporting, vendor management, operations, sales. It's time you stop using 5 to 7 platforms and consolidate into one. So listeners, don't forget, go to usource.com and start your account today.
All right, guys. Well, hey, good morning. Andrea, as people join, please just admit them and let them in. I'm super pumped for today's session here. This is a special session for me, mainly because, ironically enough, Dan and I first met through this community. The first time I met Mr. Dan Schindler, it was actually at our second Cleaning Profits event back in September of 2023. And I remember when I saw Integrity Facility Solutions register for the event, I got a little bit scared because I knew the level of business that Dan rolls at and how his culture is at IFS. And when I had the chance to meet IFS and Dan personally, I was absolutely blown away just by how they conduct themselves from a business perspective, and then by how faith works. Dan and I developed a relationship, and we also became business partners in my other business, Power Placing, which has been a blessing. So we've been doing that for a year and a half together, and I've also got the chance to now watch him lead IFS and everything he does from a janitorial perspective in a different light. And it's been absolutely amazing to watch. So this is a special session for me, but on a more technical level, I think there's very few people out there that can say that they've seen it all from the driver's seat that one has, like Dan has when it comes to sub-recruiting. I know we're going to dive deep into how Dan has constructed his business from a sub-recruiting model and why he's such a big believer in it. But I think one of the coolest things that I've seen, and I know many of you guys on this call that do a lot of sub-recruiting have similar relationships like Scott and all of that, but Dan and the relationships that he has with his subs and how he goes about recruiting his subs, and then how he goes about just providing the support for his subs, I think is really unique. I think a lot of people try to set it and forget it with sub accounts, which can cause a lot of problems. But today, this is just going to be a full-on masterclass by a great leader and a great teacher, and Dan Schindler, based out of not the great state of Texas. I was corrected, the great country of Texas, Dallas, Mr. Dan Schindler. So Dan, thanks for joining us today, brother.
Thank you. I'm super honored to be here and excited about this session. You guys are going to get a 2-for-1 today. I've asked Scott to join us. He is my national accounts manager. I'm going to let him talk introduce himself here, so I won't puff him up too much. But he's been with me for a really long time, close to 10 years, I think we're pushing now. And he manages simultaneously about 27 different states, pretty much by himself, dealing with subcontractors and the relationships there. And he's very involved in the recruiting process. Actually, I should say you're getting a 3-for-1 because my power placing recruiter is also on. I asked Dennis to join us today in case something comes up from a recruiting perspective. So what I really love to do with everybody is I've got a brief presentation that Scott and I are going to walk through, but I know when I've done these sessions in the past, we usually have a lot of questions and a lot of dialogue that takes place. And so I don't want to miss the opportunity to really have a good dialogue with everybody and try to answer as many questions as we can today. So Scott, if you want to say a few words to everybody, just say hello, introduce yourself. You're muted.
There we go. So yes, I'm Scott Humphrey, National Accounts Manager, and I think Dan over-exaggerated the number of states. It's only about 17, but it's still quite a few. Started out as sales guy, went to sales manager, then general manager, and then still doing sales, and then director of operations and national accounts, and then anything else where we've had a problem that we had to just kind of jump in and figure out how we were going to solve it. Mostly we don't go into anything with the idea of this is how we're going to do it. We find out what works and then do what works, regardless of how we envisioned it or what we would choose to do. We want to make sure that we've got a working solution, regardless of whether or not it's something that we were envisioning or not. But that's kind of what I've done for the last 8 years or so, and it's been a great ride.
Thanks, Scott. Real quick, if you guys could jump in the chat and just tell me who's already subcontracting. If you're already subcontracting, type yes. If you're direct hire, thinking about subbing, just type interested, just so I kind of know the audience. I want to talk through this, but I also don't want to beat a dead horse if you guys already got your processes down. All right, so you guys, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I do this right. Y'all see that now?
We got it.
All right, awesome. So when I talk about subcontracting, I think the piece that most people miss right out of the gate is that it's not a transactional thing. At least here at IFS, we don't treat it as a transactional relationship. Where I see a lot of companies is that they just really move through the relationship from beginning to end. It's much built on transaction versus trying to integrate cultures and trying to build relationships. So I want to start there. If I get this thing to work. Oh, first, let me give you my legal disclaimer. I thought I'd throw this in there for you guys. But just make sure that when you're doing subcontracting, that you're really in tune with what your local laws are. I know that California and different places are much less subcontract friendly. So when you're, thinking about doing subcontracting or doing subcontracting, just make sure that you're following. And also, we're going to dive into a little bit the federal side of it with the IRS, because there's a lot of questions on that as well.
What's up, my profitable leaders? I know you're listening to this show because you want to stay informed and on top of your game. And I want to bring you something that is often overlooked, and that's how we mitigate risk and actually protect our business, whether that's with misclassification of our employees, contract litigation, immigration law because we have people that work for us that are from other countries that maybe or maybe aren't misclassified. That's why we partnered with Campos Law. Campos Law is a humanized law firm, as I would put them. They are more than just expert attorneys. They're people looking to help people and business owners just like you. So when it comes to your contract setup, when it comes to your classification of your employees, when it comes to just protecting your business as a true asset, which it is why you should be talking with Campos Law. So for more information, click the link in these show notes and get a partner like Campos Law on your side.
So we went through that already. So at IFS, one of our core values is dream builders. And the very first piece that we like to talk about with our subcontractors is the dream side of what are they trying to do? We understand that they're a business and we're trying to develop a business to business relationship. And I think that sometimes on both and for the sake of this talk, we're going to call ourselves the primes. And then you'll hear me refer to ICs, which just means independent contractors. So I want to start off today with a story about a subcontractor, and this story is about 10 years ago. And this guy named Jose, and he came here as an immigrant and didn't really know how to reach his full potential. And so I took him under my wing and helped him develop some things inside of his business. And I remember one of the most exciting days that I had was that Jose came walking in my office and he had his keys dangling in the air. And he said, I just wanted to stop by. I just closed on a house. I was just able to buy a house through this opportunity of being a subcontractor. And so for me, the reason why we do dream builders is exactly what it says here on the Zig Ziglar quote. It says, if you can get everything you want in life, if you just help enough people get what they want. And so to me, I look at that subcontractor-contractor relationship as I am genuinely trying to help them. I'm genuinely there to serve them. I'm genuinely there to help them grow their business. Whereas I see, and I've been a sub before, so I've seen the very transactional side of, you show up, you get your check is shorted, you try to have a conversation with someone. It's just a very transactional relationship. So at IFS, we try to figure out how do we share our culture? How do we do a situation where it's a business to business relationship, but we can integrate our cultures together? And so I think that Diana from Badco, she did a talk a few weeks ago, if you guys were on that, where she was talking about culture. And culture is a really dynamic piece to try to develop. And here we try to be very intentional about the culture we're trying to develop, and then be very intentional about how that culture overlays into our relationship with our subcontractors. And so through that, we work through, and we could talk about this later if you guys have questions, but there's a lot of questions from the IRS perspective of whether you can train them, what you can do, those type of things. And so we look at those things as coaching opportunities. So as I go through the talk, you guys see the word training. It's going to be kind of a twofold thing. It's going to be, there are situations where we coach our subcontractors, but we also try to hold them accountable for training their teams. And so if you see the word training, I want you guys to think in reference to your sub or your IC actually being the ones that are training their teams, and you're just holding them accountable to the training that they're doing with their team members. So the big question that I get a lot is, and it's maybe in my business circles or when, I'm out and people talk about our business model as a sub model, people will ask me a lot, like, why would anybody want to be a subcontractor? Why would someone want to be a sub in the janitorial business? And so I thought I would start there. And most of our subs are great operators. They do a fantastic job of putting crews together and managing crews. And they know how to really facilitate, orchestrate, however you guys want to think about that, putting crews together, and they know how to floor plan buildings and roll buildings out. But maybe they're not really good at the sales piece of the janitorial business. Maybe they don't understand marketing. Maybe they have broken English. Maybe they don't want to be out in front of the customer with the client interaction. And so we genuinely view this as, we are in essence the sales arm for our subcontractor. We are the ones that are developing those client relationships. We're the liaison between the client and the sub. And then, because if we can build our relationship around that with mutual respect, we both understand our roles, then it helps really enhance the customer experience, because then we have cohesion between what we're trying to do and then how we deliver to the customer. So let's talk about, and I think everybody on here would be considered a prime. So I want to discuss a lot of the different pieces that we've had over the years when it comes to professionalism and the prime and sub relationship. The first piece when we're doing an interview process is we always ask our subcontractors to be very transparent about exactly where they're at. You'll have subs that'll come in and they'll say, well, I got a crew of 20, I got 32 people, I've got this, I got that. And they try to build this big, like they're this big empire. And instead of being very transparent, because we can help them if they're transparent. So that means everything for our business. That means that if, I was talking to Carlos yesterday and I said, look, in our world, we love to help the husband and wife that just wants to clean a building on the weekend, all the way up to, we have subcontractors that bill us $200,000 a month. So if and everything in between. So for us, it's just really about when they come in to onboard and they're going through the interview process, is really identifying where they're at, what their goals are, and having them be very transparent about their company size and their company structure. The next part of that is, like I talked about a little bit earlier, is really building that mutual respect. And I think there's a lot of times, if you look on the other side of my slide, that's really addressed towards subcontractors, which is really asking them to act like business owners. What we've discovered over the years is that a lot of subcontractors don't really act like business owners. I've had conversations with some subcontractors and I've hung up the phone and I've said, man, if I talked to a customer like that, I wouldn't have very many customers. And so reminding subs that they are business owners, they do have opportunities in front of them, but they need to act professional, but it's also that mutual respect. I've also seen on the other side, the prime side, where they talk down to their subcontractors. They're very degrading. They don't treat them well. They don't pay them well. And so it's really about establishing that mutual respect. Defining success for me is really going back to what I talked about a minute ago, which is the dream builder aspect of it, is sitting down with your ICs and discovering what are their goals. How are they trying? What do they want to do in the next 5 years? I was talking to Carlos yesterday and he said, man, I was watching that video with you and Ricky and you watching, walking your facility. He said, man, I could see myself where you're at in a few years, or, whatever that looks like for him. And so it's really defining what does success look like to that individual, and then wrapping your model around trying to help those individuals get to that point. Pay expectations is a huge one. We pay our subcontractors whether we get paid or not from a client. One thing I learned early on when we started this business is that 90% of the sub, maybe not that high now, but when we were early in business, 90% of our subcontractors lived paycheck to paycheck. They literally were just trying to make ends meet by cleaning buildings or whatever. And so we built our processes and our systems around the fact that a lot of these guys live paycheck to paycheck. And so what we did was establish a process where they invoice us, and then that invoice is divided by 2, and they get a check on the 15th and they get a check on the 30th. And then once they get in rotation, they're getting a check every 2 weeks, which really helps establish, like I said, a lot of them live paycheck to paycheck. They have, the day of payday, they need that money. And then we also pay them whether we get paid from the client or not. So they don't have to show up and wonder what their check's going to look like. They know immediately, like, okay, I sent this invoice in, I'm getting half of that check on the 15th and half of that on the 30th. I had my own experiences with companies that would pay when the client paid, and I would show up to get a check, and my check was supposed to be, $4,000 or whatever, and I'd show up and it was $2,000 because they're like, well, this client didn't pay or that client didn't pay. And so just that, honestly, the world we live in is centered around the money that the people are making in these jobs. And we want to establish and create an environment where they can trust us and they know that they're going to get paid no matter what. And that there and of itself will help build the quality of people and the quality of individuals that you get when you're doing the subcontracting. Best practices for us at IFS is we follow the 90-10 rule, and it doesn't work in every single market that we do, but as a majority, we try to follow this rule. And basically what the rule is that when we're dealing with a subcontractor, we want them to be subbing out 90% of their work and only 10% direct hire. So in other words, they have direct contracts with their own clients. We don't want to hire our competition to clean our buildings. So when we have our interview process, we ask them specifically, what percentage of your portfolio is subcontract work and what percentage is that you have, agreements direct with clients. That really helps us establish whether they're an established subcontractor or whether they're a competitor. We've gotten in situations in some markets where if we were to open that market, we actually have our competitor subbing our buildings, and sometimes that becomes a conflict of interest. So we really like to deep dive into that. And I know Scott will probably elaborate on that because I've got him talking here in a few minutes. And then circling right back to, again, it's just establishing those relationships so that we understand and they understand that we're both business owners and we both have mutual respect for one another. And we're both trying to drive to that end goal, which is, we both want to try to grow our businesses. All right, so our advantages in the subcontract model, and I think most of you, from what I can see in the chat, are doing the subcontract model. But just to kind of reiterate, the advantages is that you can scale fast. We're going to talk about how to build out a sub pool here in a minute, but what we did was we established a way to recruit and be way ahead of our marketing team. So when our marketing team is working a certain market, we're already way ahead of that team as far as the recruits and the subcontractors that we have in what we call our subcontractor pool. So it allows us the ability to really scale fast. Whereas if you're doing, the direct hire model, then you're going through an interview process, typically happens either in the process of signing the contract with the client. When you're covering payroll, you can't really have a bunch of people floating around waiting for buildings to come. And then you're sitting there making payroll on people just to let them sit there. Again, the number 2 on here is build relationships, build on mutual respect. The built-in supervisor piece for us is really, really key because we get a subcontractor and that business owner becomes our built-in supervisor. So that business owner is responsible for doing their quality control checks, for making sure their crews are doing what they need to be doing. We don't have any direct connection with the people that are the individuals that are actually cleaning the buildings. We do all of our communication with our direct sub, and then any of their workers below them, they are responsible for those workers. Even if I'm in a building and I see 10 people working, and my IC is there in the building with me and I see an issue, I'm not going to go to that person and say, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z. I'll go directly to my subcontractor and have them, follow the chain of command on that. So it really helps establish that sort of built-in supervisor mentality. And then a bigger labor pool. If you're in the situation where you're really trying to scale janitorial, you have kind of a twofold way to build a giant labor pool, which is you have your subcontractors that have a big labor pool, and then you develop your own internal labor pool with subcontractors. Like right now, I think if we looked at our Facebook groups and our pool, Scott would probably have a better number, but I know we probably have several hundred subcontractors that are just in the queue, waiting, ready to go, waiting for buildings. The client advantages, I feel like the subcontractor model is more reliable. And the reason that I feel that way is if your client understands how you run your business, you have the opportunity for them to understand that you're like the management side of the subcontractor. And if they're frustrated or mad at the cleaning, they can just call you and you can change out the crew. A lot of times a client, when you're using the direct hire model, won't realize that, and they'll just terminate you as a customer, and they won't have you, switch out the crew or things like that. So I think it's easier to establish the fact that you can switch out the crew in a heartbeat. I'll tell a client, hey, if you don't like my crew's t-shirt, I'll switch them out for you, for any reason whatsoever. It may not even be a cleaning issue. You may just decide, hey, I don't want this crew. And then again, back to the bigger labor pool, we have more access to labor to be able to help scale and grow alongside of our clients. And then more bang for the buck. Since we bid on scope of work and not hourly rates, we can give them better rates because we're really trying to drive towards scope of work. If we get hung up in the hourly piece of it, then our bids tend to be way higher than they can be if we're just bidding based on scope of work. And if you guys want to get into it a little bit later, I can talk about the actual math and what that looks like and how we calculate all that.
What's up, my profitable cleaners? Listen, you guys know that running a cleaning business isn't just about cleaning. It's about growth, trust, building a legacy, and making true impact. That's where Swept comes in. With Swept, it's simple, powerful. It's an app that you can track your cleaner attendance with geofence clock-ins, streamlined processes, team communication, and save hours on payroll. It's the ultimate tool designed specifically for janitorial businesses just like yours. Take control, save time, focus on what matters most, growing your business and spending time with your family. Swept. Clean better, grow faster. If you guys are interested in Swept, click the link below in the show notes and partner with one of the best in the industry.
All right, so right here, I'm going to hand it off to Scott. He's kind of our expert. Him and Dennis, who's also on here, are kind of our experts in the recruiting process. So I'm going to let Scott take it over from here.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, going back to one of our previous screens, just to segue into this, transparency from your subs is one of the most important conversations that we have with potential subcontractors. And the reason why is we have, there's multi-tenant buildings, there's large single-tenant buildings, medium size, small size, super small size, and all these require mostly a different type of subcontractor that focuses or has experience with those types of buildings. And you'll find you may be looking for somebody to do really small buildings, and they want to brag about how big they are. They have 30 employees and they're in 3 states. Well, we don't want any of that. You're telling us stuff that you think it's a brag, but in reality, you're just hurting yourself. We would much rather people be transparent so we can match them with the right market and the right size building. There's a place for everyone. We can always make sure there's a place for everyone, but only if they're very transparent about their business model, where they are in their growth cycle, and what they have experience with so far. So regarding finding them, traditionally, some of the early ways we're finding them were putting classifieds in newspapers and grain sheet and thrifty nickel, and then you can do outbound calls to churches and look for buildings around the area where you're trying to staff, and kind of reach out directly to people and just look for people that way. And we've also used Craigslist in the past. We had varying degrees of success with all these different models. And we were still struggling I think it was about 5 years ago. And I was asked to step in and see if we can find a better way to do things, because we just weren't getting the results. And I turned to Facebook. So we found out after much study that if you go into Facebook groups such as garage sales, yard sales, buy and sell groups, events, just all these kinds of groups where you can go and purchase stuff. A lot of times these groups have between 40 and 100,000 people in these groups. So when you make a post in one of these groups, a lot of people see these posts, and maybe not the person that you're looking for sees the post, but it might be somebody that knows them. And I get that a lot as well. We try to keep the posts very short. So we'll look, maybe we've got a building coming up in Arlington, Texas. So we go look at all the groups that are available in Arlington, pick out all the ones that have, excess of 10,000 people, and they're open groups where anyone can post. And usually that's your event groups, your yard sales, your buy and sell, trading, garage sale, that sort of thing. find these groups in the Arlington area and join them all. And sometimes that process can take a few days to join the groups because not all of them will let you in immediately. Tab out all the groups across the top and then pick your first group. And we just make a quick little pitch on there and say, I need a crew for an experienced cleaning crew for a building in Arlington, Texas. Call Scott at my phone number, and I put my email address on there. They never call me and they never email me, but it's on there anyway. Usually what I get is a DM from somebody that wants to clean for us. Somebody else may make comment on that post and say, I need more info. And at that point, we go back and respond to their comment and then direct message them, add them as a friend, and then go in there and direct message them, hey, I saw you commented on my post. Are you interested in becoming a subcontractor? So that is how we get the majority of people that we get in here. It's a fast scale process. Typically we're gonna reach out and talk to maybe 100 people every week or every 2 weeks using this process whenever we're going for a new building. Of course, that gets filtered down. It's a big funnel that gets filtered down to maybe 10 people that we finally get on board, or even less than that, 5 people. But you have a very, very huge funnel to bring these people in with. So it's a really fast process. You can get a lot of people quickly. You also get different people from different areas and sizes of cleaners. You're going to get some large ones that clean large buildings. You're going to get some medium-sized ones. And you're going to also find some of those people that they just want 3 or 4 buildings. They're not looking to grow a huge, empire. They just want 3 or 4 buildings to make some extra money and bring some extra money into the household. And there's, like I said earlier, there's a place for everyone when we do it this way. It's very, very effective. It's very quick. We also frequently find people that are wanting a job. They're not looking to be a subcontractor. They want a job. When I find those people, I'll often pair them up with one of our subcontractors and let the subcontractors hire them. So we get all types of different people for these jobs. It's super, super effective.
Real quick, I want Dennis to share. I'll put him on the spot a minute, but Dennis, could you share really quick your pipeline funnel? How many posts you did? Like, just use an example of maybe last month, how many Facebook posts you did, and then talk through the funnel of how many you put out, how many packets you got, like kind of like you would on a Monday morning briefing.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So we got a goal of putting out on a 2,000 Facebook posts on a weekly basis. So we try to give priority to the locations that are actually in an urgent need. So basically what we do, as Scott was saying, look for some Facebook communities, do the Facebook posts. We're looking for commercial cleaners, the number, the email. We get a lot of DMs. I get a lot of incoming calls from people calling. I explain to them what the process is, what they need to go through, and what they need to fill so they have a clear expectation. Just last month, we closed the month with an impressive number of 24 packet received. So 24 vendors that received the packet, and they were moved to application completed. That now they're going to move to the next filter, and they're going to be contacted to be explained about the pay structure, scope, expectation, and the final third interview with Scott.
So you can see that all the output of 2,000 Facebook posts a week and all that it really translated into 24 packets sent out, which is our vendor packet. And then out of that 24, I think we might have gotten 6 or so good ones, maybe 9 if I'm remembering the number right. But you can see it takes a lot of outbound effort and energy to really start filter them down. And so we know, if he's doing 8,000 Facebook posts a month, and then at the end of the month, we get 5 or 6 really good partners, then, just kind of scale, you guys can see how much effort it takes to really get. So I'll see companies that will call, half a dozen people and just go, oh, I can't find a subcontractor. There's nobody out there that's any good or any of that stuff. Well, it takes a lot of outbound effort and a lot of this is why I was, as James said earlier, this is why I got involved in power placing, was really to help kind of the dream building side with all the wonderful folks in Nicaragua, like where Dennis is at. And so, but it really does, if you're really wanting to scale and grow and build, you really have to have that frontline person that's just constantly recruiting and bringing the subcontractors in the front door. And so even at that pace, there are times where we get in situations where we don't have somebody ready for a building. So it's really about trying to stay in front of it. But anyway, go ahead and continue, Scott.
Sure. So the next step in the process, Dennis will be screening the subs, and having 8,000 Facebook posts, he's going to get hundreds and hundreds of respondents that he's going to talk to. We have to ask them great questions, find out if they're, they are professional cleaners, find out if they're being transparent with us, get references. We like to have at least 3 business and 3 personal references, and go through this screening process to kind of start where we're going. We also have a video that we put out there that mostly is previous subs or current subcontractors that we have that have outlined their experience on a video. We ask everybody to watch that. The next thing we do is we send out the subcontractor master agreement, and the master agreement lays out all of our expectations as far as what we expect from you, what your professional behavior is, what you're going to do, what you can't do, and just how you're going to, perform your duties and present yourself as a subcontractor working with the IFS. The master agreement, and I tell everybody, if you sign this master agreement, it doesn't obligate you to take buildings. It doesn't obligate you to do anything at all. It just says that if you do decide to work with us and take a building with us, that you're going to perform everything according to the, kind of the rules that we put down in the master agreement. Super important part of it. Some people read it and then they think, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. That's too much work. No, I'm not going to do this. And that's fine. They can go do their own thing, but we are going to get a lot of them that read through it and they see that it's professional and it's not anything that's unexpected in the business world. The next thing is the pay structure. Dan touched on that a minute ago. We have a real straightforward pay structure. We are going to pay you on the 15th and 30th for your janitorial services, whether we get paid or not. Just send in an invoice with all the information that we request, and do a good job, and everything. You're gonna get paid. There are a lot of people out there that do what we do, especially here in Dallas. They're kind of our competitors. Just to be honest, they're sketchy. They're shady. They don't pay on time. Their customers don't pay, so they don't pay their subs. They try to get their subcontractors to do a lot of free work. I'm not gonna name names, but it's a big problem. And a lot of the people that we talk to, they have a really bad taste in their mouth already of being burned by these other companies. So, I got a question from Paul here. In the master agreement, do you add in language for non-competes? Yes, we have a non-compete clause in there. We ask them, first of all, we don't allow them typically to trade contact information directly with our client. Second of all, there is a non-compete in there that says that you're not going to directly solicit business from our clients, whether that be special services or the janitorial itself. And there are fines in place for doing so. If we lose a building because you may lose a building just because they're soliciting them, and they may just decide to cut us both loose, or they may get the client. In which case there are fines and resources in there. But yes, the non-compete is in there.
We also write in there that they can't drive their vehicles with their logos or their magnets onto properties that they're servicing for us. And then we also have a line item in the contract that encourages them to go work for other companies. One of the things you'll see on a labor board audit is the first question they ask is the subcontractor working for other companies, or do they have crew members working for them? And so we write that line right into the sub agreement that basically says, hey, we really encourage you to go work for other companies that are primes, so that you have a big portfolio of companies that you work for. And that really alleviates a lot of the gray areas too. And it also helps us in the contract side because we're actually encouraging them to do it.
And I think in addition to the labor board, the state labor boards which they can all have a little bit different rules. That's one of the 26 items, the questions that the IRS uses to determine if somebody's a misclassified employee or not. And the fact that they work for other crimes, is one of the things that helps there. In addition to, in regards to, not driving up in somebody else's branded vehicle, I think we used to give out T-shirts with our name and stuff on it, but I think it might be going forward, especially in some states, that's a bit bad business practice to try and force them to wear your IFS shirt and represent IFS when you really don't work for IFS. But we can ask them not to represent their company in our buildings. So, they may be San Antonio Janitorial, but we can ask them, please don't wear your San Antonio janitor shirts in our buildings. You can wear whatever you want, just not that. But yeah, we do a lot to try and protect our business, not just protect it in non-compete sense, but we also don't want to confuse our customers. And if you give them, mixed signals about who you are and what you're doing, that can end the relationship very quickly.
I can give you a quick story of a group that we had, and the guy had all good intentions. He thought he was just trying to do really good customer service and be very helpful, but he went around, after we gave him a building, he went around and put his business card on every single person's desk in the building. And from his perspective, he thought, oh, I'm just trying to be helpful. I want everybody to have a point of contact. From our perspective, we were like, no, A, it's like you're trying to solicit your own company, but B, it also feels like you're trying to cut us out of the loop. So part of that is we really try to establish the chain of command, because we don't want to get canceled from a customer and they're like, well, I've been telling your crew XYZ for months and they're not fixing it because we got cut out of the loop. We didn't know, and we didn't find out till we got canceled on the contract. And so we always try to establish those lines early on as far as the non-compete side and everything, but also the interaction with the clients.
And that is an ongoing, ever-present discussion. I don't think there's any week that goes by that I don't have to have a discussion with at least one subcontractor somewhere. Please do not contact our clients directly. Everything needs to go through me. Don't cut us out of the management loop, because that's putting the risk, both at risk for losing the building. So that is a thing that we have to constantly stay on top of. So the next thing was scope expectations. We want to make the scope of work for any individual building very clear. We have multi-tenant buildings. Their scopes are very clear. Some of those are custom. We make sure that the subcontractors have a copy of that, or at least our supervisor does. We have single-tenant buildings, and often our mid-sized single-tenant buildings often have very custom scopes of work. So we have a printed and emailed, PDF version of that scope of work, so they can see exactly what they're responsible for. And then some of our newer programs where we have standardized, we have free standardized scopes of work for different price models that they all get a copy of those as well. But clarity is great. If you don't have clarity, they're going to drive off the road somewhere. We have to have that clarity. You have to have it in writing. You have to have it in a PDF or a checklist or something for them to follow. Along those same lines, professionals use professional equipment and chemicals. So I try to get everyone off the idea that, okay, you got a building, please don't run down to Walmart and get a $40 Hoover vacuum to go vacuum buildings with. Those they have a duty cycle of 1 hour per week, and that's it. And you end up buying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those things in a year because you didn't buy quality. You're just trying to throw some, $40 or something. They can go buy, you spend a little bit more money, but you can get a sanitary upright for a couple of $100, maybe $100 used, and it's repairable infinitely forever. I think we have we still got that sanitary in the closet. It's like 20 years old. And then if you bust any part on the sanitary, you just order a new part, and it's the same one that's been around for 40 years, and they're infinitely repairable. Same thing if you're going to get a backpack, like a Mosquito, which, we're a dealer for Mosquito, or you've got, what's the other one? Pro Team. I love Pro Teams. That's a great backpack. Yeah, they're expensive, but it's never going to break. And if it does, you're going to get warranty service on those things. Professionals use professional equipment. I don't let people come into buildings with Walmart, string mops and Walmart spin mops. I see that stuff way too much. Or bringing Fabuloso or bleach or ammonia into a building. Those are not professional cleaners. And yeah, so Toby, that conversation is part of our selection process. We do ask everybody to make sure that they are using professional chemicals. There are lots of buildings that require it. And according to OSHA standards, if you have, there's a big segment of buildings that are required to be under certain things, but if you have medical and you fall under FDA or OSHA for medical, then you have to have an SDS book. All your chemicals have to be marked. All your chemicals have to be in the SDS book. Good luck getting an SDS sheet for Fabuloso. Good luck getting an SDS sheet for, a bottle of ammonia. That's not going to fly on your OSHA rules. Not just medical, manufacturing, and there's a few other market segments where it's absolutely required to have all those SDS sheets and have all your bottles marked. So I'm a big stickler on that. When I inspect buildings, that's one of the first things I do is to go to the janitor closet and see what's actually in there. But part of this part of our process, we talk about it in the interviews, in the first interviews. We talk about it in the second interview. We talk about it in the third interview. We talk about it in the trunk check. And then I continue to follow up and check the janitor closets to make sure they are using professional equipment and professional chemicals. The other thing about using chemicals that are professional, most of that stuff is dilutables. You can buy dilutables instead of ready to use. And if they'll take the time to learn it, it will save them piles of cash that they would otherwise be throwing away on ready to use chemicals. Dilutables are just a huge money saver. So what I was talking about, and it's not really in here, we have a first and second interview. Once Dennis turns them loose, they finish their contracts, he sends them over to me. I have a script, and I follow the script. It's the same script I've followed for the last 5 or 6 years. I finally put it in writing this year, but I follow the script to make sure that they're who we want, and we have a place for them. They're going to fit into our culture. They're going to fit into our buildings. They can help us out. They can be a great partner. And I'm looking to vet them to make sure that they're going to be all the things that we need them to be, and we're not going to have future problems with them. Now, we have another guy that works with me, Matt, and he's an awesome young man. And he has the exact same script. But when he asks the questions, he's not looking to vet the crew. I've already done that. He's looking to build a relationship with them. It's the same questions, but he's trying to figure out who they are, what they're going to work best with, build a relationship so they know him and he knows them. And that's the second interview. And once we get past that, we actually find them a building. The third interview is when we send them out with an ops manager to clean the building. And the first thing we want to make sure is, did they clean up well? Can they, how do they look? How are they going to look in front of a client? Are they going to be able to talk to a client? Some people we can put them in front of a client, and some people we can't. So we want to make sure that that's the case in the third interview, which is, of course, the first clean of the building. We do a trunk check as soon as they get there. Open up. That's your rolling janitor closet. Make sure there's no Fabuloso. There's no bleach. There's no ammonia. There's no Pine Sol in there. Don't ruin our floors, please. Make sure that they're using professional equipment. Now, the trunk check, if they don't pass the trunk check, that's not necessarily a deal breaker. We just have the conversation again. These are chemicals and items that you cannot use in this building. You want to run down and get some stuff. Or maybe I've got some stuff in my trunk with me that I can loan you for the night, but you got to promise me going forward, you're going to bring professional equipment and chemicals into the building. So we do a trunk check. We inspect their work. We don't really say anything on that third interview. We just go let them clean the building and watch and make sure that they're doing it the right way. They're cleaning from top to bottom. They're catching all the items on their checklist, on their scope of work. Make sure they're doing everything. If it's a larger building, make sure they're starting in the janitor closet and ending in the janitor closet and not making 50 trips in between, because that's just hurting their bottom line, making those return trips to the janitor closet. Assuming that they do a good job and there's not any big deal breakers that we can't train out of them, we'll give them a vendor assignment. Now, the vendor assignment is the real contract. The master agreement We're just saying you agree to do this for us under our rules if we give you a building. We give them an actual vendor assignment and the keys to the building and the alarm code, assuming that they passed the third interview. And that is a real contract. You will do these things. You will do it and these behaviors. You're going to get paid in a certain way. You're going to give us 2 weeks notice if you decide that you don't like the building. All those sorts of things are in there, and they actually have to sign for the building at that point. We have paper ones, but we also have a process where we can pick up an electronic signature either on site or remotely. Locally, we have a program that allows them to sign on the phone. If they don't want to do that, then since I'm a national account guy and I've got people from coast to coast, develop processes where they can sign them remotely as well.
That it? You done?
I don't. So Ricardo asks, do you communicate with them via software? I do not. I tend to call. Well, we do text and email frequently. I prefer. I think texting is the most succinct and precise way to misunderstand and miscommunicate every conversation. So I don't use text where possible. I want to talk to somebody where we can have an exchange of ideas and really make sure that there's no gap in clarity. And I think by texting, you're just opening yourself up to gaps in clarity. Same thing with any kind of a software system to communicate with them. We generally don't do that unless there's some sort of reason that we have to do an email or something because we need documentation. Typically, it's going to be on the phone.
Yeah, what we have found, so we do have proprietary software where all of our inspections and everything are in there, and then those inspections convert to PDF. So they will get correspondence of those inspections throughout the day as those inspections are happening with the operations team. But what we have discovered is that a big bulk of our subcontractors do not read email. And so typically we'll follow up with a phone call that says, hey, there's some inspection reports in your email. And then some of them I've even had to screenshot the PDFs and send them via text, over because they just don't read email. So that's been a challenge for us. You would think in the day and age we live in that would not be a huge challenge, but no joke, we literally have some crews that are still running with flip phones. And so, even texting them sometimes is a challenge. So,
in software, I'd like to bring this up real quick. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sites that we clean. We're in, I think we're in actually 17 or 18 states now. We're coast to coast. And I get this question all the time about, using software for all these different things. Or I have software companies that call us all the time, try to convince us to use their software because it has all these cool features. And the reality, especially with subcontractors, you want to use, there's an expense to using software too as well, but it's always best to use the simplest software you can use, the simplest amount of software you can use, the least amount of software, and you want to get clarity and you want to get consistency. And I think a lot of times software is just an expensive product that gives you features that really don't benefit you or the subcontractor. They sound cool when you first try them out, but in the end, you always go to the most simplest factor for getting everything done. And that in a lot of cases we have two platforms now and two software platforms. Neither one of them really integrate with our crews all that much. And then we have text, email, and phone. And there's really not a need for any fancy software, in my opinion. Yeah. Subscription hell from Paul. we don't do that.
So from a software perspective, really everything from the sales process all the way through client acquisition, we have very tight software processes for that. Our sales teams, everything, our follow-ups, all of that's very tight on software. Up to we have a customer-facing help desk where they can create service tickets and those get sent into the help desk. And then Matthew, who's our help desk manager, runs through all of those. And so from the forward-facing side, the customers they all love the software stuff. As soon as you get to the part where you're dealing with the subcontractor and trying to relay all of that information that came through all the CRMs, the help desk, the service tickets, all that stuff combined, the inspections that we're doing, all that, at the end of the day, the best process for most of our subs is a phone call or a text. So
Yeah, don't chase benefits and features. Just use what you absolutely have to have and nothing else. I mean, we're running this company with 3 software platforms, and that's it. And if we can figure out a way to trim that down to 2, I'm sure we will.
yeah, we're trying real hard. I understand. I was looking here not too long ago, and I looked at our P&L, and we were spending over $10,000 just on software platforms. And that's $10,000 a month. And I was literally like, we have got to figure this out. This is insane. So our current CRM that we're using for our help desk and all of our process through there is HubSpot. We came out of Pipedrive. And then for our proposal writing software, we use integration between HubSpot and PandaDoc.
And I want to plug, just because I like it, I know Dan's not crazy about it. We've been using Monday.com. If you don't need a ticket interface with your clients, Monday.com is one of the simplest software platforms. It's kind of a do everything platform. You can program a lot of it yourself, and it's probably in some cases less expensive than other options. But there's some limitations that it doesn't do, and that's why we need to move away from that to HubSpot. But I do recommend Monday.com.
Yeah, Monday.com is beautiful.
And some of our automated forms too, we use GoCanvas. GoCanvas is beautiful. It does some really, really neat things that other platforms just don't do. Unfortunately, GoCanvas just doesn't really integrate with anything.
Yep. Yeah, GoCanvas has integration problems. That's the only thing with it, but you can build all your forms out, so works great. All right, we probably need to get cruising along here. So I'm going to jump to the next slide.
All right, I know you guys are wondering, how can we keep our cleaning crews engaged and informed, and it doesn't have to feel like a struggle? With Team Engine, you can now automate messages, update teams in real time, and bridge language gaps with their built-in AI-powered translations. Whether it's scheduling, last-minute changes, or sharing critical updates, Team Engine keeps your workforce connected and productive. Say goodbye to miscommunication and hello to smoother operations. Visit teamengine.io to get started today.
All right, so we talked about the sub pool. Our design is we have our own personal, one of the things Scott didn't talk about is we have our own personal subcontract Facebook group. It's just Integrity Facility Solutions, Subcontractor, something on Facebook. I think we have about 1,500 members in that group. That just gives us opportunities, one of the 2,000 a week posts that Dennis does, but it gives us a place to actually communicate and talk to subcontractors, and then put ones that are known to us. If we have a new job opportunity, we can put those out there. The thing about the hiring side of it is we hire at such a level, or I say hire, we actually recruit at such a level that we're very clear to whoever comes on board with us that they're going into the pool, which means they may or may not get a job right away. It just means that they've been approved through the system. They're ready to go. As soon as the job pops up, then we're going to call them right away. That way, again, like I said, we're always in front of what we're doing on our sales department, and we're always trying to keep one step ahead in the recruiting. The biggest key to that is once you put them in the pool, they're in there. Always check in with them, put a cadence of maybe once a month, checking in on them, just see how they're doing, make sure they're still in the janitorial business, make sure they're still open to work, and then keep your vendor pool list very clean of active people that are really ready to go in whatever areas you guys are working. Like in our situation, we may need to fill a job in Arizona one day and Louisiana the next, and so we try to keep a very active pool going. And then we live by the 3 strikes, you're out. Basically, if we offer you 3 buildings and you've told us no 3 times, then, and whether it's price, geographic, whatever it happens to be, we always tell them, don't worry about saying no the first time if it's not a good fit for you. If it's not close enough to your house, it doesn't pay enough, you don't feel like you can make money, whatever the reason is, don't take a job just for the sake of taking a job. Wait for the one that fits you. Wait for the one that's the right opportunity for you. But just know by the time you get to your third one, then we're going to take you off the list. And then once we get ready to place them in the building, it goes back to our third interview that Scott talked about earlier. Ricardo, so basically we make it very clear to them that they're only allowed to sub one tier down. We all know if it goes from our sub, they sub it again, then they get their mother-in-law to clean it, then their mother-in-law's busy, so she gets the cousin to clean it. By the time this person at the bottom is in there cleaning, they're making 20% of what the contract is paying. And of course, we all know quality is going to tank at that point. So we ask the question, if we started getting quality control issues on a building or we're getting a bunch of complaints, we'll go straight to our subcontractor and say, who's cleaning the building? Is that you or do you have a crew in there? Okay, let's communicate with that crew and make sure that they haven't gone another tier down. So we do allow our subs to have subs underneath them, but it's only one tier down at that level. We don't let them go any deeper than that. So
yeah, we try not to let them go that deep. I mean, sometimes it's just a necessary evil, and I know that there's 3 or 4 places out of the hundreds of buildings we have. I'm only aware of 3 or 4 places they're doing it, but they're still giving us the quality and following all the rules. So we're doing it there, but we do prefer that they don't do that.
All right, so once we place them in the building, we do a recurring SWOT analysis, which is, if you guys are familiar with the SWOT acronym, so the strength side of it is really based on our inspection program. So immediately after they start a building, 2-3 days after, or even the next day, we're going to make a call to the client. Hey, how was your clean? We know it's going to be good because our operations team was on site with them. And so it's really what's critical is the next clean after that and the next clean after that. So we have a regular cadence of inspections, phone calls to clients, we run through that process. And then part of the SWOT analysis is really trying to identify, okay, where is this new subcontractor? Where are their strengths? Where are they really strong? So you may get one that's very passionate about dusting buildings. So their buildings are never dusty, but you go in there and the carpet's not vacuumed because they hate vacuuming. And then you get to the next one, they absolutely love vacuuming and they hate dusting. So you try to figure out what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. And we do that on a scale of 1 to 5. So the way that we rate all of our crews, if a crew that works for us gets an inspection, it's going to be 3s right down the board if they're meeting scope. If they're below scope, 1 or 2, and then if they've really impressed us because they went above and beyond, then they're going to get a 4 or 5 on the report. Early in our days, it used to be okay, we give them a 5 if they're on scope, but they didn't really have anywhere to go. So we make it clear to our clients, we make it clear to our subs that if they get an inspection report that's all 3s down the middle, then that means that they've cleaned the building to scope and everything is satisfactory. If they start getting 4s and 5s, then they're doing a great job. If they get below, then vice versa. Then we look for opportunities. We live by the 4 T's, which is the first thing we do is we try to identify what are we tolerating. So if you're tolerating the constant, they keep missing a trash can, they keep not vacuuming, so you identify what are the things that you're tolerating, and then where do they need more training? We'll go to our ICs and say, hey, your crew needs more training in an area, they keep missing this, there's a communication problem, whatever that looks like. And then we'll identify, make sure that they have the proper tools to do their job. Like Scott was talking about with the trunk checks, everything might be fine initially. They might have a backpack vacuum cleaner when they show up, all that. And then 6 months later, you show up to a job and the backpack vacuum motor went out and now they're using a Walmart from Upright and now the quality went down. So always ensuring that they have the proper tools to do the job to meet the scope of work. And then if all of those 3 things check out, all of that, then you have to talk about, well, should this person be terminated? And that's obviously a tough conversation sometimes. And then threats. We always like to have contingency plans in place. What could go wrong? Identifying the things that could go wrong. The thing that I didn't point out in the earlier slide is one of the biggest advantages to having a subcontractor versus a direct hire is that they're responsible for cleaning that building no matter what. No matter what. They don't call in sick. They can't call in sick and say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't clean the building. Remember, this is a business transaction. You have to clean the building. It's your business's responsibility to make sure that that building is cleaned. And so whatever that look, and we make that very clear on the front end. If you can't make it to a building, you need to have a contingency plan in place to make sure that building's taken care of, because IFS is not going to fill in the gap if you decide you want to go on vacation or you get sick or whatever that looks like. You need to have a contingency plan in place. Lost keys. What we do when we start a new client is we get an extra set of keys from that client. We actually have a keyboard that's locked up in our office, and all of those keys are coded according, like it'll be aisle 1B. And we do that specifically. We don't put the customer names on the tag. It's in our CRM. So if we want to know that customer like the crew lost a key, or they can't get in the building and one of our ops team member has to grab a key from the office, then they know they'll just go into the CRM, look, okay, that's key B1. They'll go into the key room, pull B1 and head over. But there's no labels in case these keys get lost, because that's a big liability. I've gotten keys back from IC that are just in a big pile like this, and every one of them has the name of the business, the address, and the alarm code. Okay, well, if I just lose that whole batch of keys, now whoever found that batch of keys has access to all these buildings with the alarm code. So we want to make sure we never do things like that. So always having those contingency plans in place. And then we do, as Scott said earlier, we do require a 2-week notice, or they get penalized for not giving us a 2-week notice. What does that mean for us on our end? That means we get them out of the building as quick as possible. If somebody gives us a 2-week notice, we want to have them out of the building by the next clean. But it also gives us an opportunity to buy some time. If it's in an area or a rural area where we're having a hard time filling a building, it gives us a little bit of extra cushion, so they're required to clean the building. But as most of you probably know, that as soon as you give them notice, or they give you notice, the cleaning is just going to taper off, and it's not going to be good. So anyway.
Ricardo just asked, what are the top 3 reasons that we terminate a crew? And I'd say by and large, the number one reason, and that's probably 80% of the time or more, is they're just providing poor cleaning and they're not responsive to fixing it. You ask them to fix it, they don't fix it. You ask them again, they still don't fix it. You ask them again, they still don't fix it. And eventually you just find out that they're going to be like that in all the buildings. But that's the number one thing, is cleaning. Occasionally we run into something else odd, like they brought kids into the building, or maybe they're soliciting their services directly to the client, that sort of thing. But 9 times out of 10, I'd say it's clean, just bad cleaning and a refusal to improve it.
Yep. As you actually hit our next question, Ricardo. So so terminating a sub, one thing I always tell everybody is follow your gut. Like, internally, like, stay one step ahead of the client. Be thinking about, there's something that's just not driving with this individual. Just follow your gut. And then again, back to, did we use the 4 T's? Did we follow that process? Did we make sure we checked all of our processes and they're doing what they need to be doing? Too many underscored quality control reports, just like Scott was saying. Bad clean after bad clean is a great way. And then a not a true partner really means that every time you get on the phone and you say, hey, customer XYZ has this problem, and all they want to do is argue with you instead of saying, I got you, I'll get this credit. They want to justify themselves. They want to tell you why they're right. They want to tell you why they didn't miss that trash can when I just got a picture from the client that it did get missed. And you're constantly in this like defensive mode with that particular person, then they're not a good partner. You want somebody that's going to be, yes, I'll get this taken care of. I'm on it. Do I need to go right now? The best ICs that I've had in all of my years are the ones that say, hey, I'll get in my car and drive there right now and fix this problem. It's that sense of urgency. So we really look at, are they a true partner? Do they really want to help us with the end result, which is obviously client satisfaction? And then the last one is the client demands it. They're like, hey, you either change out the crew or we're changing you out. So those are kind of the top reasons we see for terminating subs.
Can I interject something weird too? So after doing, we got my biggest account, we got 70 or 80 locations all at once, and we were just throwing bodies in buildings as fast as we could. And when we recruit, Most of those people are no longer with us. We recruit as many people as we can to give us choices and give us somewhere to go. And I've changed out many of those buildings over and over and over until we got the right crew. Going back to what Dennis is doing with the recruiting process and having 8,000 Facebook posts a month and talking to 400 or 500 people a month and sending out 50 to 100 contracts a month, and then getting us between 5 and 20 new subcontractors a week. It gives you choices. I think the worst thing that can happen is if you're not recruiting enough and you have somebody, you find these people that they're not a good partner like Dan is talking about, and you try to train them and you try to work with them and you try to work with them and you try to work with them and you try to work and you continue doing that forever, you're not going to fix people. That doesn't happen. You're not going to fix people. You're not going to grow people. You're not going to change people. Either they have the will and the desire to grow or they don't. And if they don't have the will, you need those other 20 people that you recruited this week to replace them. So you can find out who does want to grow and you find out who wants to be on this journey with you. The worst thing in the world is when you only have one guy working for you and you're backed into a corner and you have to continue to use that guy because you haven't recruited enough. Give yourselves options, give yourselves leeway, give yourself a way out when you have a bad partner. Don't put up with bad partners.
Yeah, or worst case, you're out there cleaning buildings yourself because that guy quit, So, all right, this is the last. I just wanted to throw real quick some of the forms that we use up here. We use an interview sheet, a checklist. We specifically ask very specific questions. And then, as Scott said earlier, we ask those in a series of 3 different times. And a lot of times it's just trying to see if this person is being forthcoming and honest about what they're saying. They may answer the question, you write it down, and then you ask them the question, the same exact question on the second interview, and you get a different answer. Well, it's a red flag for you to go, maybe this person's not everything they said they are. And then again, we talked about our master vendor agreement, our vendor assignment, and our inspection reports. Those are our minimums of what we would use. And then optional forms are damage reports, theft reports, lost key, incidents, missed clean reports. We like paper trails on everything. We don't want anything coming back later down the road and saying, if there's a lost key, we want to take responsibility for it and figure out what the best, resolution is to the problem. We've had everything from a property manager telling us, don't worry about it. It wasn't labeled. It's probably in the trash somewhere, to other buildings that are saying, nope, I need my whole entire building rekeyed. And $10,000 later, we are, running new masters to everybody. So, you want to be very careful about that, but it's also very important to document all that stuff, even though it's a subcontractor, prime agreement. The reality of it is everything that happens in the building, the subcontractor is reliable for. If a picture gets broken or a computer gets broken or somebody steals something, or like one time I had a subcontractor that put a drug addict in one of our schools, and they decided to take every single laptop and computer out of the building and take it down to the pawn shop so they could buy drugs. And so, I basically gave the lady my Dell credit card and said, here you go, have fun shopping. And that was an entire school of computers, and they have computer labs and all that. And the guy literally took everything out. So it's, again, that level of trust and making sure that your subcontractors are also running a good vetting process and just not throwing random people in the building, because that can cost you in the long run too. So anyway, that's all we got. And I think we've got about 15 minutes for questions.